Hey guys, it's George Hughes from Glass Mountains here, your remote team of WordPress experts. Now in this show I talk to Glass Mountains lead developer Ben Lumley about WordPress and security. We talk about some of the points you need to consider when you're looking to improve the security of your WordPress site. This is part one of a two-part series. And whilst I have you here, we have a free online session coming up on the 24th of April at 2 o'clock British time. Myself and Ben will be speaking about WordPress tips to help you manage and maintain your WordPress site. To find out all the details about that and to register interest, please check out the show notes below. Okay, that's enough of that. On with the show. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, today we're talking about WordPress, we're talking about security and stuff like that. I thought a good place to start is to understand, what is hacking? Because I think a lot of people out there, they got that kind of mental view of a hacker in the dark room targeting a specific website. But I
Yeah,
don't think, whilst those cases may exist, I don't think it's always as structured as that, is it?
no, it's not. I think that's a common misconception. I think people believe no one would target them, and so therefore they kind of think it doesn't apply to them. Yeah, for me, it's WordPress is a big open source piece of software. Vulnerabilities get discovered in it and are there to be exploited. That doesn't normally mean a human is coming in and exploiting it. It normally means, at very least, that there's some sort of automated scanning and identification of where there is a WordPress website that's got a vulnerable plugin installed, that's got a particular version of WordPress installed that may or may not have certain bugs in it. So that as and when things are discovered, you can ideally it's then an automated targeted attack from their perspective, but it may also be that it's automated identification and then a human gets flagged to go and do it. But
Right, yes. So the script has identified there could be a vulnerability here. So then it's almost like passed to somebody higher up who can do something more targeted at it.
yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think all sorts happen, and to be honest, you never entirely know what the case has been. You can sort of sometimes guess from server logs and things that if there's 1,000 hits to a particular URL in a short time frame, that's probably automated. But aside from that, you're guessing a bit, and ultimately it doesn't really matter. The important point to take is that the resource to identify and find these websites is almost limitless. So the kind of no one would attack my little business argument isn't really valid.
No, I mean, we've certainly seen that before where people are surprised that people are trying to hack into the site, again, thinking there's a person out there, but without realizing, no, it's a blind, mindless script almost like ticking through all over the IP addresses or whatever it can do.
Yeah.
Primarily because, I mean, I can't remember the stats, it seems to change all the time, but the amount of sites that WordPress actually powers, that it's worthwhile hackers' investment to target WordPress because it's not a niche product.
No, exactly. It's a widely used thing. It's if you're a hacker, then it's time well invested. I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is a hack isn't as simple as taking your website down. In most of these cases, the aim is to monetize your website somehow for someone else's gain.
Right.
So again, people don't care who you are or what your website is. They just want to, it can be as simple as link building. They insert links back to their own website all over your website, or they may insert ads. So, and we had an example a couple of years back where one of the Glass Mountains client sites had been exploited, and had ads put at the top and bottom of every blog post. But in addition to that, there were plugins installed to hide the so the hack had used a plugin. The guys had gone to the extent of writing a plugin to deliver their hack with. They then installed the plugin and installed another plugin to hide the plugin, if that makes sense. So as an admin, you couldn't see any different. The ads themselves also didn't show if you had any of the WordPress admin cookies. So it went unnoticed for a long time, to the point I think we concluded the hack had even happened before the site was sort of on our hosting and so on. But I don't think we were conclusive about that. But ultimately, that was, we think fairly lucrative for the guys that had put it in there. And all we were really able to do was remove it and move on.
Yeah, because I mean, there's no matter of, we'll talk about some of the measures that we can take with sites, but if a site is already compromised, that there's a different amount of cleanup which you need to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll touch upon them in a moment. But so a key thing is, the question coming out of that is that most people think of WordPress and they wonder, is it secure? So based on what we're saying at the moment, it's sort of, well, it is secure up to a point if you look after it in a certain degree.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. If you've got millions of websites out there all running the same software, so inevitably when a problem's found, suddenly there's millions of websites that are vulnerable. Problems are found in all software.
Yeah, very much. I mean,
The nature of it.
if you stick a WordPress site onto bog standard hosting with none of the protection, which we're going to talk about next, in my mind, it's a matter of time before that gets hacked, really.
I think it certainly is if it's not kept up to date. I don't think I'd necessarily agree that it's as simple as a matter of time if you're on rubbish hosting. I think the arguments for and against rubbish hosting are bigger than that.
I think I meant with no updates at all. I think in that environment, which a lot of people do, is kind of, because it's such a sliding window that it's an arms race, that if you don't keep the plugins and the WordPress up to date, that is just like an easy win for.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you see is the websites that get left on hosting like that don't get updated, and all the rest of it are also the ones that aren't going to notice some of the more subtle hacks, and the hacks can then live there doing whatever evil bidding they're doing for someone for a very long time.
Okay, that's good. So let's look at some of the steps which people can take to sort of secure their WordPress site. I mean, an obvious starting point, I suppose, would be to, if you're going into your website today thinking, well, where do I start, is review who has admin access.
Yeah, and what level of admin access that is as well, I think.
Yeah, do you need all those admin access in there? And I think we can also look at what is the password strength.
Yeah, so definitely make sure you've got some sensible setup in there to ensure people don't have weak passwords if you don't trust your users to do it for themselves. I think, does WordPress do that out of the box now? I think it might enforce password strength.
Yeah.
If someone just needs to post blog posts, don't give them access to every single. Don't make them an administrator. Make them an editor, for example. And just lock the accounts down sensibly. That way, if their account is compromised, you minimize the damage. And this is just standard security practice, really, for any system. It's not unique to WordPress.
I think on that point, something that we tend to do is to install that Stream plugin, isn't it? Just to give a little bit more role-based lock, so we can investigate, because you don't want people sharing accounts. It's not necessarily about pointing fingers, but unless you've got accountability with who has done what and when, you've got no audit trail, have you?
Yeah, that's I guess sort of slight aside, but yeah, if something has gone wrong, it can be useful to have that level of accountability there. If nothing else, it means you can restrict which accounts need their passwords reset, which accounts you sort of need to delete and recreate potentially, because credentials might have been added or profiles tampered with, that type of stuff. It's just more information to help, really.
So we've mentioned the basics in terms of keeping the plugins up to date and keeping the core WordPress up to date.
Yeah, I think so. What do we normally recommend people do? We tend to do it monthly for bigger clients, but sometimes slightly less frequently
and I think some of the bigger clients with, let's say, WooCommerce, what we tend to do is to update all those in a stage environment, because those ones can easily, those big plugins with lots of interdependency. You don't want to take a risk on a live site with that.
Especially if we've customize things as well. We need to make sure what we've changed still works with new versions and so on.
So do that in a test environment, test it out, and then you can deploy it to live.
Yeah.
Good. So the next thing on the list was to consider the host, because we use people like WPengine and Flywheel, which, because 95% of what we do is WordPress, over time it's made more sense for us to use a WordPress specific host because they understand WordPress, and of course, they put some measures in place which can help with securing WordPress sites because they haven't got all manner of things on their servers.
Yeah, so they can, lock things down, close things off that WordPress doesn't use. They can set their networking environment up to be WordPress specific, and you can, if you've only got WordPress there, they can at server level, at network level, they can detect traffic anomalies and with some level of certainty, they can decide that that's an anomaly and take some action against it in a way that a more general host can't, because they've got all manner of things on there.
All manner of technologies to support. Yeah, because in general, talking to people online chat, whether it's WPengine and Flywheel, it's handy to speak to a specialist. And of course, in terms of security, they've got tools in place where they can do security scans and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they keep your sites sort of up to date to a degree as well. So if we've certainly seen where vulnerabilities have been found, either that they are very proactively emailing us to tell us that we've got things installed should we not have noticed, and that there is an update available that needs to be added ASAP. We've also seen them applying updates themselves because they've deemed it important enough, and we've also seen them mitigating at network level to sort of avoid attacks that might otherwise sort of get through. So the WordPress REST API issues that were around early on last year are a good example of that. Most of the WordPress dedicated hosts sort of did their best to mitigate those at network level, even before WordPress had released a fixed version.
Okay, they preempted it and
I think they just blocked that category of network traffic. And I guess in that case, because it was new functionality that had been added, they were feeling relatively safe to just block that.
Yeah, so if there's people watching this who they're not quite sure what it means in terms of network level, I suppose if we think of it that, say, WordPress, they've got all of these WordPress sites. Of course, they see the traffic going back and forth from the internet accessing those sites, and they're able to spot, these are involved in the latest hack, and if they can spot those trends and those patterns in the traffic, they can take action there.
Yeah, they can block it. They can rate limit it. Rate limit is where you only allow it once a minute or once every 10 seconds or something. They can, there's things they can do that it's just a level away from WordPress.
Yeah, so they're not, the protection is not necessarily on the site itself. It's on the network and the infrastructure around it.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
We use Cloudflare a lot for that as well, don't we?
Exactly, and which is a great point to lead on next. We tend to use Cloudflare anyway. It's got a few facilities built into it, which can help with things like performance. But the one element I've always liked about Cloudflare is that what they call the web application firewall. Again, going back to what you mentioned there, sort of there's that protective shield almost about the website. You use that term delicately because, of course, security is an onion in that sense. You've got to have all your ducks in a row. You've got to get all the layers right. But what I do like about if you enable the web application firewall in Cloudflare, which I think is on the pro account,
yeah, I think you have to pay.
Again, it's that network level security we're talking about there.
Yeah, and the nice thing, even if you don't want to pay for Cloudflare and use the free plan, they have a history of sort of the worst exploits as they've been discovered. They have offered free protection for a period of time, and then sort of emailed everyone to tell you you've got free protection. Why not upgrade and get this all the time? But fair enough. It's also very quick. To use Cloudflare, you have to point name servers at them and so on. So it's not necessarily easy to immediately switch to them the day you've got a use case for some of the more advanced features. But if you're using the free plan, it's dead easy to pay them a bit of money and immediately get access to that stuff. So that's a reason to use them even if you're not going to pay. But yeah, if you do pay, the web application firewall is there, and it has a sort of default set of WordPress rules in it, which are a great start point to kind of cover off sort of your average WordPress attack. So things like trying to brute force the login, which is where a robot usually will try combinations of usernames and passwords to attempt to gain access.
Yeah.
Oh, is that some creature in the background?
We do have children who are at home when they would rather not be, it would sound like.
No, it's complete. So you wonder how many recordings and meetings are just ejected by children shouting, which is nice. I think it brings the human element out.
It's authentic.
So with the web application firewall, I think the benefit there is sort of if there's a vulnerability in the core WordPress or a plugin, and there's a network level issue which they're resolving, it's almost buying you a bit of time.
Yeah,
it's there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another tool. It's another thing you can use.
Yeah.
It's all about options, and
it's all about mitigation, isn't it? Really, I suppose. I mean, the point is that if you want your website to be 100% secure, you're just not going to attach it to the internet. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and no one can use it, and by definition, then no one can hack it. But that's not going to help anyone's business goals, is it?
No, not at all.
It's risk management, and to some degree cost management. It's deciding what level of risk you're prepared to accept as a business, how important this is to you, and balancing that off with what it costs to mitigate the risk, both in terms of actual financial cost, but also just sort of hassle factor for staff users of the website as well.
So that about wraps it up for part 1 of this series. Part 2 will be coming next. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified when that new update occurs. And also don't forget we've got that online session coming up on the 24th of April at 2 o'clock. Please check out the show notes below if you'd like to register some interest for that. Okay, thanks for watching again, and stay safe.